On March 14, 2003, 17-year-old Hana Foster left home to spend time with her friend Helene. A few hours later, they said goodbye at the bus stop. From that moment on, Hana was never heard from again. But thanks to the quick work of the British police, they managed to discover a very strange call to the emergency services, which eventually helped to solve the case. Hannah Claire Foster was born on August 31, 1985 in England. She lived with her parents Hilary and Trevor and younger sister Sarah in Southampton. Hannah was a model student and always strived to get the highest grades in her senior year of high school. She was preparing to enter medical university, and since childhood the girl clearly knew what she wanted to study. Her family always supported her in achieving all her goals. On March 14, 2003, 17-year-old Hana decided to take a break from her long studies and go for a walk with her friend Helene. The girls went for a snack and a drink at a well-known local bar. At 10:40 p.m., they decided to go home. A surveillance camera recorded them walking together down a nearby street. According to Helen's friend, they reached the bus stop and started waiting for the shuttle bus that was supposed to take her home. Hannah, in turn, decided to walk, as it was about a kilometer to her house, and she thought it was not a very long distance to walk. Then the bus arrived, the friends said goodbye, and that was the last time they saw each other. Hours passed, and Hannah still hadn't come home. At 5 a.m. on March 15th, her parents began to worry. It was unusual for her to come home so late, and if she stayed over at a friend's house, she made sure to let them know. They called and texted her, but there was no response, although Hannah's phone was still on at that time. Several hours passed, and at 10:30 a.m., Hilary and Trevor decided to go to the police. They had already spoken to Helene, and she had told them everything that had happened. They also called Hannah's other friends to see if they had seen her that night, but none of them knew where the girl was. When Hilary and Trevor arrived at the police station, because Hannah was a minor, her 18th birthday was still a few months away, and because her behavior was unusual for her, the officers decided to start looking for her immediately. As is always the case in such cases, the person who last saw the missing person is considered a person of interest. In this case, it was Hannah's friend, Helene. She was interviewed by the police in the presence of her parents. Helene was very adamant in her testimony. She told the police what she had already told Hannah's parents, and the CCTV cameras outside the bar and bus stop confirmed her story. Helene had never told a single lie and was therefore no longer of interest to the investigation. Now that the police knew she had nothing to do with Hannah's disappearance, they had to start looking elsewhere. Luckily for the investigators, the girl's cell phone was still on at the time. It was on all night and all through the early morning. During this time, she received calls from her parents, as well as messages from friends. Helen herself was texting and calling Hannah to see if she had gotten home safely. Through all these messages, it was possible to track where her phone was. Each time Hannah received a call or message, the phone would connect to the nearest communication tower. In this way, several points could be marked. The officers also asked the phone company for the call and message history of the girl's number. One thing that stood out to the authorities from this record was that in the early morning hours of the day of the disappearance, Hannah's cell phone received a call from an emergency number in England. Further investigation revealed that the emergency number records listed the call as a silent call. The operator answered the call and did not hear anyone on the other end of the phone. She told the caller that if help was needed, to press any key on the phone, but none was dialed. The operator eventually mistook this for a silent call, terminated the call, and continued on with her work. Several police technicians listened to the call, adjusting the volume to see if they could find anything in the call, and indeed they did. From far away, a girl they mistook for Hannah could be heard talking to a man. This call was decrypted, and the transcript was reported by the media. However, the original audio recording was never released. Apparently, the phone was either far away from the two people or in a bag or backpack, and so the caller, mistaken for Hannah, did not hear any instructions from the operator. The following is a dramatization that appeared in the media with a transcript of the audio recording. You live in this country? Yes. English? Yes, I'm English. Where are you from exactly? Farrington. My name is Sarah. Sarah. Yes. From the movement of the phone, police assumed that Hannah was traveling by car in the early morning hours. From the voice and accent of the caller, they determined that he was an elderly South Asian male, leaving them with many possible suspects. Fortunately for the investigation, Hana's cell phone was still on when the call was discovered and all reports were made. Thus, it was possible to determine the approximate location where she may have been. The phone was in Portsmouth, 30 kilometers from where Hana was last seen. It took several hours to find the exact location. Eventually, the girl's phone was found at a waste collection point along with her handbag. By this time, the police feared the worst. They were treating Hana's case as a kidnapping, but after discovering some of her personal belongings, they decided that it could be a case of murder. A few hours later, the investigators' worst fears were confirmed. On March 16th, Hana Foster's body was found in the countryside in the bush. It was found thanks to the great efforts of the authorities, who involved hundreds of people to search all the places where the victim's cell phone was located. It should be noted that the body was several kilometers away from the recycling center where the cell phone and purse were found. Therefore, the assumption was made that the person who did this first got rid of Hana's body, and then proceeded to dispose of her belongings. Forensic examination of Hana's body established that the cause of death was asphyxia, as a result of strangulation on the face and neck. There were scratches on the girl's body. It was evident that she was fighting for her life. In addition, she had various hematomas on her head and legs. Forensics also found that she had been raped before the murder, and a DNA sample was taken from her body in the form of seminal fluid. The police entered the sample into their database of all registered offenders, but the search was inconclusive. The sample was therefore saved for later comparison with possible suspects. At that moment, it was clear to the investigators that they needed to find the person who had taken Hana's life. But the job was difficult, as they had no leads and no specific suspects. The investigation team decided that perhaps by reviewing the CCTV footage they might be able to find something. They reviewed hundreds of hours of footage from all the cameras along the path of Hana's phone, and concluded that the girl had been abducted and transported to the location where she was found in a white van. This white van was visible in several CCTV images, repeatedly and at all points where Hana's phone was connected to the communication towers. It was announced in the media that a man between the ages of 35 and 40 from a South Asian country, such as Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Afghanistan, or Bhutan, was wanted. The man was supposed to drive a white van and also be a person living in the area where the body was found, since it was assumed that in order to take Hana's belongings to the waste collection point, he would have to know the area. A few days after that, a suspect was found. He was Maninder Pal Singh Kohli, a native of India, a father of two, married to a woman from Southampton. He had lived in England for many years and drove a white van provided to him by the company for both work and personal use. The man worked for a delivery service and his route was very similar to the points reported to police. His manager said that the day after Hana disappeared, the man came to work very nervous and with a scratch on his face. It was his manager who reported him to the police. Kohli had no criminal record in either India or England. In both countries, he was a model citizen. The man was a very responsible father. His children's teachers said that he and his wife always attended all meetings and looked after the children. His neighbors also said they thought he was a very hardworking man who never caused trouble. Despite the fact that he had no criminal record and did not fit the profile of a man capable of raping and killing a girl, the police decided to investigate him. They were also able to obtain a search warrant from a judge for the van used by Kohli. They were able to find the vehicle parked outside his workplace. It was very strange that the man had left the van at his place of work, as he usually took it home. An examination of the back of the vehicle revealed blood and seminal fluid that matched the sample found on Hana's body. It belonged to the same person, and the blood found in the backseat of the car was the victim's blood. This man thus became the authorities' main and only suspect in the crime. On March 19th, police went to Kohli's home to question him, but his wife said he was not at home. The day before, on March 18th, he had gone to India, ostensibly to visit his dying mother. Kohli's wife added that she did not know when he would return. The suspect's brother worked as a police officer in India, which made investigators very nervous. They began to think he would never be caught, and it seems their fears were confirmed. The Indian government gave them no answer as to Kohli's whereabouts. They were simply told that he could not be contacted. At the time, officers suspected that his family was helping him hide, but the man's father appeared on Indian television, saying that if his son had committed a crime, he should pay for it. Meanwhile, his brother was his main defender, saying he was wrongly accused and that he 100% believed he was innocent. On the 28th or 29th, Meninder's wife called and said there was a problem or something, that they were being falsely accused, and she was also being harassed. So he needs to go back to the UK, but I know for a fact that he is not guilty. If he committed this crime, hang him. I will be the last person to defend him. Time passed, weeks turned into months, and finally a whole year had passed since Hana's murder, and no one knew where Coley was. The girl's parents were desperate. They wanted their daughter's killer to go to jail, but with no response from either the UK or Indian government. They decided to travel to India to find out what had happened in Coley's case. The parents took advantage of the media of that country. They gave interviews on television, in newspapers, and even handed out flyers with their daughter's face and Coley's, urging people to report the man if they saw him. They also said they were prepared to pay a cash reward to anyone who provided information about the man wanted by authorities in England. A few days after their arrival in the country, the testimony of a cab driver emerged. The cab driver said that a man with the same facial features as Coley got into his car. During the ride, they talked, and the man said that his name was Mike, that he lived in England, worked as a courier, and that he was currently on vacation in India. The cab driver passed all the information to the police, but unfortunately this did not help to find the man. On July 15, 2004, while Coley was on a bus to Nepal, he was stopped by an Indian police officer. His face was all over the news in the country, and it was thanks to this officer that he was identified. Coley was traveling to Nepal with his new wife. It should be noted that Nepal does not have an extradition treaty with the UK, and the police assumed that this is why he was trying to get there. The man already had a new identity. His real name was Mike, according to the cab driver. He had a new job, shaved off his beard, shaved his head, and he even had a new wife. Hana's parents and loved ones thought the process would end there, and the man would be sent to England. But what happened next was a procedure that stretched on for several years. Sometime after his arrest, Coley confessed on a television program that he had raped and killed Hana. He said he had not planned to kill her, but she told him she would report him to the police. Obviously, I committed a crime there, so I escaped from there and went to India. Presenter's question: what did you do? Coley's answer: I kidnapped, raped, murdered Hana Foster. Presenter's question: why did you admit it in the media? Why are you admitting it now? Coley's answer: I did it because I was so tired already. Tired of, running back and forth, and I want to get it off my chest. I just want to tell the truth. Even though Coley's confession was videotaped and it was known that he was in India, the authorities did not immediately take him back to England. The man, with the help of his brother, hired a team of lawyers, and they made the process very long. There were a total of 100 court hearings and 35 appeals to keep this man from being brought back to England for trial. As I said before, his brother was behind all of this, who told several media outlets that Coley was innocent, that he was made up as the man who killed Hana, and that it was all a government plan to find the guilty party and close the case. It was only in 2007 that it was decided that he would indeed be extradited to England for trial. On July 28th of that year, Coley arrived in England and was arrested by authorities. He was charged with kidnapping, rape, and murder. He pleaded not guilty and changed the version he gave on television in his home country. He initially claimed that he found Hana's body in a car, panicked, and dumped it where the police found it. However, this version did not match the timeline given by the surveillance cameras and the location of Hana's phone, and the DNA test came back positive. The seminal fluid found on Hana's body was Coley's. After receiving this information, he changed his version again. The man said that a group of criminals had forced him to rape and kill Hana that night, and that was why he had thrown away the body, as he did not want the group of criminals to harm his family. The prosecution put before the court the following hypothesis about what they believe happened that night. Hana and Helen say goodbye at the bus stop. Hana waits for her friend to get on the bus and leave. After that, she starts walking home. There were no people or cars around her, so she was basically walking alone on the side of the road. Coley, for his part, was coming back from work. Seeing Hana walking alone, he decides to drive up to her in his car to talk to her. The girl immediately realizes that this man is a threat to her and discreetly dials the emergency number. She does not lift the cell phone to her ear to follow the operator's instructions. Police believe Hana's phone was either in her purse or in the back pocket of her pants. That's why the sound was so quiet. In the recording, Hana can be heard starting to lie to Coley. She gives him her sister's name and age, gives him a completely different neighborhood than where she lived with her parents. Obviously, she didn't want to give her details to a stranger. After giving his details to the stranger, Coley somehow dragged Hana into his car. It is not known whether he deceived her by saying he would give her a ride home or forced her into the car, as the conversation had already ended by that point. Police believe he drove with Hana for several kilometers, then stopped in a deserted area, put her in the back seat where he raped her and then killed her. He drove a few more kilometers disposing of the body, and continued driving until he reached a garbage collection point. He did not want to take any of Hana's belongings with him, as he thought that perhaps with nothing of hers, the police would not be able to accuse him. But what Coley didn't know was that the girl's cell phone was on and had enough battery power to last several hours, and that would prove to be an important detail in the investigation. After getting rid of the girl's belongings, he returned home, hung out with his family, and went on with his normal life. When he saw that Hana was being searched for, he decided to go to India to hide. A trial was held in November 2008, and on the 25th of that month, the man was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 24 years in prison. He was 41 years old at the time of sentencing, and the judge commented that Coley would not be able to apply for parole until 2032, at the age of 65. Friends, what do you think about this story? Write your opinion in the comments below the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video. See you soon.